When we go through a devastating loss, it's easy to believe that joy is gone for good. At that point, your heart just feels too heavy to even try. It may even feel like you will never be happy again. So you try to push the pain down with all your might and bury it for good, because it feels like an enemy that has invaded your life. But then you wake up every morning, and that weight is still there, a constant reminder of what's gone. But what if there's a different way? What if happiness is actually about what we do with our pain instead of just feeling good? Maybe our suffering doesn't come from the pain itself, but from our resistance to it. The secret to finding peace again is actually very simple. It starts with an empty space. There once was a man named Kaito who lived in a small house by the sea. For years, his life was filled with the joy of companionship with the person he loved most in the world. Their days were woven together with shared meals and easy conversations. But one day, a sudden illness struck his wife and eventually took her. The house fell silent. In the weeks that followed, Kaito's grief felt like a great dark stone. It had appeared in the middle of his living room. At first it was so huge it filled the entire space, pressing against the walls and ceiling. There was no room for anything else, which meant no light could get in, and the air could not move. There simply was no space anymore for the warmth of the sun or the memory of her smile. And before too long, his life became a never-ending struggle against this stone. He spent days trying to push against its unmovable weight, with his muscles aching, exhausting himself trying to chip away at its edges, desperately hoping to make it smaller, but the stone just wouldn't budge. How could it? It was made of every memory that now lay broken, made out of love. And how can you break a stone made of love? Other times he tried to ignore it, walking around the edges of his house while keeping his back to the room and pretending it wasn't there. He filled his days with busy work, hoping that if he just kept moving he would forget the cold presence that had taken over his home. But at night, in the silence, he would always feel its immense pressure, a suffocating reminder that his world had become small and dark. Kaito believed that to be happy again, the stone had to be removed. This is the story most of us are told, isn't it? We're taught that grief is like an illness that must be cured. Pain is the enemy, always. And so, like Kaito, we resist and fight the reality of what happened. This resistance can look like a lot of different things. Sometimes it's staying busy at every cost, filling every moment with so much noise we never have to feel the silence. Other times, it's trying to force ourselves to move on, putting on a brave face when we're actually falling apart inside. But every time we do this, we're like a person standing in a raging river, screaming at the water to calm down. But wouldn't you know, the river doesn't care what we want. It only pulls us under. This is where this next part tries to help us understand where true suffering comes from. You can think of it like an equation. Pain multiplied by resistance equals suffering. The initial pain of loss is inevitable. It's a natural part of a life filled with love. But the prolonged feeling of being trapped and endlessly tormented by our own hearts comes from resisting. Kaito's exhaustion came from all the energy he spent trying to destroy the stone. He was at war with a part of himself, and in war, everyone loses. One afternoon, an old Zen master, a friend from a nearby monastery, came to visit Kaito. Without offering any condolences, he walked into the house and simply sat down on the floor. With his back straight, he observed Kaito's space and the immense pressure of the stone. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Kaito spoke, his voice hoarse. "I can't get rid of it," he whispered. "I've tried everything, but it won't move. I'll never be happy again as long as it's here." The master nodded slowly, while looking at the walls around the stone. "You have been trying to shrink the stone," he said with a calm voice. "That is not your task. The stone is made of love. It will not be broken." After a short pause, he said, "It is not your job to shrink the stone. That is impossible. What you have to do is build a larger room." Kaito just looked at him confused. "A larger room?" "Yes," the master said. "You can create space around the pain. Happiness is not the absence of the stone, Kaito. It is the spaciousness that can hold it. For you see, true healing comes from changing our relationship to our pain, not from getting rid of it. It's about cultivating a mind so open and vast that it can hold sorrow without being consumed by it. You can still feel joy while also feeling pain. All you have to do is make more room." So now you might be thinking, "Okay, build a larger room. Let's get to it. But how?" For questions like these, we now offer 100% personal meditations made especially for you. For more information, check the description box below. It is a practice. The master taught Kaito that the work begins by turning his attention to the space around the stone. First, he taught him the practice of awareness. Kaito learned to just sit quietly and notice his thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them. His grief was just a storm cloud passing through the sky of his mind. The sky simply holds the clouds, so it isn't affected by them. In the same vein, Kaito learned that he was the room that held the stone, not the stone itself. This simple change in perspective was the first step in creating space. Second, he taught him the practice of presence. Kaito started to notice other things besides the stone, including, but not limited to, the feel of the floor beneath him, the sound of the waves outside his window, and the sensation of his own breath, in and out. These were small things, but they were real, and they existed in the present moment, right there in the space around the stone. Each time his mind was pulled back into stories of the past or fears for the future, the master would gently guide him back. Finally, he taught him acceptance. Kaito stopped saying, "This shouldn't be here," and started to gently acknowledge, "Yes, this is here. The stone of my grief is in this room." Acceptance simply means you stop wasting your life fighting what is. The moment he stopped resisting, the walls of the room began to expand. Weeks turned into months, and Kaito continued his practice. The stone in his heart didn't disappear. It was, as the master had said, made of love, and it was a part of him now. Some days, it still felt heavy, its edges sharp, but the room around it had grown. It was no longer a suffocating space. Light started filtering in through the windows again. The scent of the sea breeze could move freely. One morning, a neighbor brought him a warm loaf of bread, and for the first time in a very long time, Kaito noticed its comforting smell. He found space for gratitude and sat down to drink a cup of tea. There was space to enjoy its warmth. His happiness was now a quieter, deeper kind of peace, completely different to what it had been before. A joy of an open heart that was strong enough to hold its sorrow and still have room for the beauty of the world. He learned that grief and joy could exist at the same time. There's a story that perfectly illustrates this idea, about a man who wept for his wife in the morning but was heard singing in the afternoon. When asked how this was possible, He explained that when he thinks about losing her, he is overcome with grief. But when he remembers that her true nature was never born and can never die, he is overcome with joy. Kaito understood this now. The presence of pain did not mean the absence of peace. The stone was still there, and it would always be there, but it no longer defined him. He was the man with a room so large it could hold a stone, and the sun, and the sea, and a friend, all at once. The pain you're carrying is real, and its weight is immense, but the wisdom of this story teaches us that we don't have to be crushed by it. Our path to healing isn't to destroy the pain, but to build a heart big enough to hold it. If this story offered you a little space today, consider liking this video and subscribing for more moments of peace. And maybe share it with someone whose heart feels a little too full right now. Remember, the pain of loss is a measure of our love, and it may never truly leave us. But we are the space that holds pain, not the pain itself. We are the quiet, loving awareness that can be present with it all. Sometimes the people we love don't really leave us. They just become the silence that guides us from within. If you feel drawn to move beyond just understanding these pointers intellectually, if you want to truly see for yourself what you already are, we've put together a structured digital retreat to help guide that deeper unfolding. It's designed to gently take you from conceptual glimpses into a more direct, lived recognition of your true nature. We use clear, straightforward guidance combined with guided meditations that invite you to rest in what's already here. You can find the full retreat linked in the description below. And if you prefer to listen without any music or background sound, we now offer audio-only versions of the newest videos. They're available exclusively on Patreon. Check the description for all the details and how to access them.